Hello, everyone, and welcome to a 1-3 edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast. It's a Tuesday after week 4, where the Bengals have come out flat to start the 2023 season. The flat starts aren't new. The negative 43-point differential, a little newer. T.O. and Billy are both going to be with us today. T.O. will be joining us a little bit later, but right now, Billy is in Long Island. Last time I saw Billy, we were at Paycor Stadium together watching the Bengals win. Now we're back together talking about a nasty little Bengals loss. So, Billy, let's check in with you first. How are you, and how was your Sunday of watching these Cincinnati Bengals putter around the field for 4 quarters?
Well, I'll take it back to last week. Sunday sucked. But I got to give a shout out to you and your pops and your mom, your entire family, man. For those of you guys that didn't see or didn't know, my dad and I took his first trip into Cincinnati last weekend to go to the Monday night game. You did not lie about the whiteout night game. I mean, the vibes are just immaculate. Did a little bit of a different trip, took the extra day, went Saturday to Tuesday on it with the Monday night game, and got to get down to the stadium area, did the whole Banks experience. It was just, it was insane, man. And my dad and myself, we can't be any more grateful than you guys. You guys are just the best, and a huge thank you there. Listen, Sunday it sucked. I was really, really pissed. Kind of disbelief when even when the third quarter started, like, all right, let's just get a turnover, 3 and out, like, let's just get it moving. But I kind of take it, and maybe I'm crazy and I've taken this approach lately of just like, you have a throwaway game every year, right? A game that you think you're going to win. If we go back, I actually predicted the Bengals to lose this game preseason. I didn't like this game. I didn't like being there. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it that probably don't make sense on paper, but reality just was a fact. I mean, Tennessee coming in off of a shellacking in Cleveland. This is probably where we stand this week, is probably where Tennessee stood last Saturday going into this game Sunday, of like, hey, we lose this game, like, this is probably our season. So I think there's a lot of factors there. I don't know, man. I'm one of those, like, I don't think it's the calf. Like, I don't think the calf is really that big of a deal anymore. Like, I think there's ways around it. I think the jig is up on the shotgun 99.99% of the time. Like, we got to mix it up. But I said this, like, I think I've had to come to the realization, and I said this to you guys, I think I said to my dad too, like, we're just probably never going to be the 1 or 2 seed on this run. This division's just an MFer. The schedule, the way it lies out. I mean, let's just look at it. I mean, we played the AFC East, and we played the AFC South, and you played Tennessee twice, Jacksonville, Houston, whatever your Florida is. It's just a different route, man. Having to go to Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland, and getting them to come to you, it's a different route, man. But you just go back, I'm frustrated. I'm not out of hope. I said to you guys, if there was ever a time in life that you need the Arizona Cardinals, this is a perfect fit on the schedule. And it's time to get right. And I think it's time to you had the best tweet, I think, and I'll finish this here and let you go on. Like, it's not that they lost 3 games, it's how they lost those 3 games, right? And you put a lot of bad tape out there, but I think the reality of the situation is that we sit and it's October 3rd. Like, we can write it, but the writing has to start on Sunday.
Yeah, and we can sit here and plot all the miracle runs we want. And no matter what this team's record is, with Joe Burrow, this podcast will probably still be sitting here plotting some sort of miracle runs. But I think it's important for us to really kind of take inventory of where this team is now. We do this a lot. We'd like to take a pause and take a little inventory of where the team is now. The reality of the situation is it's not that they just lost 27-3 to the Titans. It's that they're 1-3 and they've scored 0 first half offensive touchdowns. They scored 3 offensive touchdowns as a whole. It's just, you're looking at a team, and by the way, they've given up the most explosive running plays, and they are the 2nd worst rushing defense. So it's not just, the offense is puttering along. Obviously, the offense isn't doing a tremendous amount to help the defense, but this defense is getting gashed in ways that we haven't even seen it get gashed in a long time. To me, I think if you look at both sides of the ball and where they're really, if you're really looking for themes, it kind of just seems like this team is stuck in a lot of the same stuff that they've been for the past 2 seasons, and they're stuck with some of those same traits that And we look around the league, and what do we praise? We praise teams, changing identity, changing looks, innovating, progressing. Um, Two teams that stand out to me, obviously, the Miami Dolphins are revolutionizing offensive football right now. But the team that I really think the Bengals can take a little bit after in some capacity is, I mean, look at the Washington Commanders. Eric Bieniemy obviously is their offensive coordinator. He's been with the Chiefs, brings a lot of that playbook. But I mean, you look at their offense. There's lots of motions that create easy touches. There's not a lot in the Bengals offense. There's just a lot more that puts the ball in playmakers' hands, give them yak opportunities. I have a hard time putting my tongue on exactly what all the problems are. But I think that the offense is kind of where I think a lot of our brains are, just because we've seen them so stuck in the mud and to know the pieces they have and the quarterback that they're paying all this money. Man, I think that's just wild. And so, Billy, I think you were kind of teasing it with some of your begrudging of shotgun earlier. But at this point in the season, what do you want to see change in this offense? What is the biggest change you would like to see going forward from this offense? Because right now there's a lot to complain about, but I think that there are definitely some components that we can single out and identify.
Yeah, I think for me, like you have to get under center some, man. And I know he's not comfortable with it. I think you're just way, way, way too predictable. And it starts with the inside handoffs to Mixon. I mean, we can point out of as much Bengal football we want. 85% of the time they're going to run the ball, whether it's personnel, whether it's just how they kind of line up. I mean, there's so many aspects to it. But get your guys the ball. Like I look at the Monday night game, you got the ball to Jamar at any cost. Like he was, I think, 14 for 140 or whatever, or 11 for 140, whatever it was. And you got him the ball no matter what. Like that has to be the game plan on Sunday. Has to be.
And it sounds very simple on paper, but it seems very hard watching this offense try to do it. I mean, I think the first play of the game was actually a nice little design look to Jamar Chase. I think there was even one of the better looking screens I've ever seen to Jamar Chase. And there was a little bubble, and there was 2 good blocks, I think, from T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Your 2 other premium receivers put in a good block for your other receiver. But that was all on your script drive. After this team got away from its script, a lot of the creative stuff seemed to just kind of completely vanish. And I went back and I've watched the tape, I think, 2 times, and I've kind of flipped through another time just to kind of look at some different stuff, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And it's just bland, man. And it just feels like a lot of the same concept over and over, a lot of the same depth of routes, and another thing we see a lot of clear routes. I don't know if there's anything I want to see in this offense. It's got to be, for me, I want more motion. I want more simple stuff designed to create touches for these premium wide receivers. And Billy, you put it perfectly. Against the Rams, when they designed all those touches for Jamar Chase, it wasn't an accident that he had his best game of the season and one of the best games as a pro. Even though it wasn't the yardage total and didn't have a touchdown, I think that's probably one of the most balanced games we've seen from Jamar Chase. It's one of the most dangerous games we've seen from Jamar Chase. And frankly, it doesn't make any sense they don't do it more often. And now you have a dinged up T. Higgins, so you're not going to be able to maybe create as much motion for him. But even for a guy like T. Higgins, I mean, watch some of the tape, man. If you just get him the ball, he's going to create an extra 5-6 yards just because he's so big and lanky and hard to bring down on first contact. So creating more motion, getting these premium wide receivers easy touches, I just think it does a lot for you. It also diverts attention to other places. One key play that really stands out to me, I put it on Twitter, is a play where they put Jamar Chase into a little short motion, and it brings the slot corner in when they snap the ball and leaves Tyler Boyd wide open for a little throw right for a first down. It's those little motions, man. It creates a little confusion in the defense, and this team doesn't do enough of it right now. They give defenses too much of the same over and over again. I get the Burrow likes to sit and read, But man, at some point, if he's not going to be able to be the same mobile, roving gun that we've seen in recent seasons, because the cap is still kind of getting 100%, and that's still part of it. There's no doubt about it. But if he's not going to be that guy right now, and this offense isn't able to function like that, man, you got to think about getting these guys in motion a little more. So, Billy, I know that I think play action and motion are probably the two biggest things we can see in this offense. Any thoughts on integrating a little more motion? Because to me, that's just such a simple thing that is getting missed, and something they actually do okay with when they use it now, but they just simply don't seem to do
it. I definitely agree. I think you made a great point to us in the group text of the day. Like, where's your running back twos here? Where's Chase Brown? Where's Chris Evans? Like, like you said, I don't think that they're fully using all their arsenal. And I get that to a point. Like, I get how they've played the last couple of years. And obviously, like, this is something I said the other day. Like, you posted at 0-2. You don't want to be 0-2. They answered the bell at 0-2. Obviously, I mean, you got to think last year. What they did last year is really kind of underrated. Coming off they played a Thursday night game against Miami right after that. I mean, obviously, all the momentum, playing at home, whiteout, everything there. But, like, to win back-to-back games after you're 0-2 and pretty bleak is tough to do, especially when you won 2 in 10 days. So I think that there's and that's one thing I think about when I look at the, national media scale of it. I think people are overlooking the sense of that locker room, and maybe us as fans too. Like, I mean, I was with you. Like, this team's done. Looking through Sunday, and I kind of had to take a step back for myself. Of like, every time this team's been like up against the wall in the last 3 years, they've answered the bell. I mean, you're a phantom pass interference or holding call in the end zone on 3rd down in the Super Bowl, and a late tackle at the end of regulation against the Chiefs to possibly winning back-to-back Super Bowls. Like, you're close, dude. So I think a lot of people are selling this team short on their ability to just kind of get it done when their backs are against the wall. But to kind of go back on the schematic issue, like, I think you make great points. Obviously, you got to get some more motion in there. You got to get some play action. Mixon's playing some of the best ball he's played in the last 3 years. Like, we can't overlook that. But listen, it just hasn't translated, and it's going to take time. Things are going to take time. Like, you got to win this week. Obviously, you got to win this week. But I mean, I would love to kind of, and this maybe gets into a little further in the pod, but like, there's got to be some upgrades here. I'm sorry, my daughter's doing a little singing act over here. But there's got to be some upgrades, man. I mean, I think Taylor Hudson is serviceable, but I mean, him and Drew Sample out there is just not enough hands at that tight end position. We got to get Irv back. You got to see what he has, but I think there's some upgrades to be made at some of these positions. And I think what we said today, the other day, it doesn't have to be a big name, but just more depth pieces, man. Another depth tight end, I think, helps. And might I say another receiver, man? Because if you're just going to continue to just run T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on decoy routes, let it be a third guy in there that's reputable, right? Do you bring in I obviously thought some of the Tampa Bay guys, maybe a Chris Godwin at a point or things like that. But, like, if there's a team that's out of it with a veteran second or third receiver, it's just a name that has to be respectable. I think you got to take a flyer, because I said to you guys, I'm fine on putting a 3rd, 4th, even a 2nd-round pick, because, like, let's be honest, man, we haven't hit on a ton, and the window's now. Like, you don't want to lose a year, and that's my biggest. Like, everyone says, like, you're not going to win a Super Bowl every year. We get that. You might not beat a Super Bowl every year. Understand that, but you don't want to completely punt on a year, and I don't think they have, and I don't think they will, but. I mean, you're flirting at a point if you don't get to 3-3, 4-4, where, like, it's not good times.
And I think you kind of put it right where it needs to be frame wise. In that, I mean, the further down this thing sinks, I mean, goes without saying. It's just going to get more and more uncomfortable, not only for fans, but in that locker room, because none of these guys want, like, losing. All the talk with this team was wanting to deliver Cincinnati a Super Bowl. Right now, they're not on track to deliver Cincinnati a playoff berth. With that said, we're far from talking about the draft. Billy brought up some in-season acquisitions, and you kind of have to be thinking that way, because to me, even Irv Smith coming back, he kind of is who he is. He's been banged up. He's been, a guy that you haven't been able to count on a ton throughout his entire career. Tanner Hudson's a practice squad guy. Drew Sample, we'll talk about him more later. The running back 2 thing to me is kind of captivating, and something that I think it's a guy named Santori Miles on Twitter, good dude, points out is that the Bengals seem to just love drafting the same running back over and over again, and none of them seem to be a good running back 2. They're all these undersized guys with some speed, but without a lot of shiftiness and without a lot of size. Right now they have Trevion Williams, Chris Evans, and Chase Brown. I don't see a running back 2 in any of those guys. Those guys can play okay running back 3 roles, but and maybe not Chase Brown. I'll get a little more into that in just a little bit. But man, you just hope that one of those guys at this point could give you a little bit more. I don't know.
I mean, how much do you miss Samaje Perine on this team right now?
And that's exactly where I was going, man. I mean, how do you go find that next guy? Because Samaje Perine, I think, was a later in the season pickup when the Bengals were kind of not a contender. So where do you find that guy? A guy with some skins on the wall who's played meaningful snaps and can show up and be just a professional in pass protection. He doesn't have to light the world on fire. They need a professional that they can trust on third down at this point. And not to say that Joe Mixon can't do it right now. He's exceeded expectations, I think, by pretty much every fan had. I think we can all admit that. I think we're pretty comfortable, but you don't want to have to rely on a running back that's 26 years old to carry the weight that you might have to with Joe Mixon at this point. So, I mean, how much?
We haven't said it, but he's never played a full season either. He's missed.
No, he's always a little digged up. There's always a little something, and that's
right.
That's part of being a running back in the NFL. And that's why having a running back 2 is so damn important, and why I've always continued to be confused why that move never came. They've seemed to have stuck with Chris Evans, but even this year, they don't really seem to like going to him a whole lot. They've stuck with Trevion Williams now for a second consecutive season, and they don't like going to him a whole lot. So it kind of leaves you with Joe Mixon to be the bell cow, and you got to throw one of those other guys in. But it seems like for the most part, if you're putting one of those guys in, you're going pass, or even when you do run, those runs just seem to get gulfed up so easily. I don't know if it's just because they don't feel the line as much, or I don't know what it is, man. But that running back.
I mean, I don't know how much you watched last night too. Like, look at some of them. Like you said, some of the pre-snap motions. I mean, a couple of the sets that Seattle had out. I mean, the double tight ends in the backfield and the shotgun, like things like that could just open up a ton, And I think it's kind of at that point where, all right, we're a month in, a lot of films out there. We got to get a little creative, right? Because like you make a good point. At a certain point, you are who you are, right? The Bengals roster is not changing in October. It's possibility it changes in November into December, but at this point, like you are who you are. So how do you maximize some of those spots, some of those positions? And like again, you can't talk about it. I mean, if T. Higgins plays in October, I'll probably be surprised, right? Cracked rib, like the guy wants to gut it out. You know where he is in his contract stit, but I mean, you got to think about that too. He's making a business decision. I don't think there's any chance you see him before San Francisco. I don't think that's logical, right? I mean, you got to go get it done shorthanded now.
And another thing that if we're talking about getting the most out of personnel, Billy, why aren't you just leaning on the left side of your line and running off of the backs of those guys? We can sit here and talk about, him and Ha about Cordell Volson's long-term viability as a starting left guard of this team, because he hasn't been very good in pass pro this season and hasn't been awesome a lot in the run blocking game. But the reality of it is, when they've run the ball off the back of Orlando Brown Jr. and Cordell Volson, those have been pretty positive plays for this team. Those guys are huge and physical. They've even had some nice weak side runs with those guys. Those guys seem to be communicating at an extremely high level on the left side in the run blocking game. When you have a hurt quarterback and you have something that works, I don't know why you go away from it. I mean, the 49ers have never been shy about leaning on Trent Williams and running off of his back, especially when Laken Tomlinson was there over the last couple of seasons. They've downgraded a little bit of guard over the last 2 or so years, but they're still not afraid to run off the back of Trent Williams. Not ever. To me, I just feel like they're missing some of the easy things in this offense. I think that's the most confusing part of this team to me right now is what's so hard about missing some of these targets. It's really stuff that's become so commonplace and so modern that you wonder when Zach Taylor and when Brian Callahan are going to innovate that in, because we've seen them adjust at times. The Lord knows we've seen them adjust. It's just it feels like they're behind the times, and it's taken them week after week, and they're just catching up one piece after another.
Did it make you feel like they were back on Monday night when they made those halftime adjustments, where they just like looked like a different team? But more so, obviously, you need to win that game. But like the adjustments and just coming out a different team in the second half, like that's the Bengals that I've known over the last 3 years. Like that's the difference in this franchise. And I put it back to it, and I understand where Zach comes with some of the coach speak and some of the monitoring of it. You know, you're getting that manhandled, giving up. We gave up 3 touchdowns in 6 minutes, right? It's a 21-point game in 6 minutes. But like, I'll say this, like, if there's no Nick Scott roughing the passer, do I think that becomes a one-possession game? I do. But it's hard to punt games like that. Like, that's the stuff that kind of itches me a little bit. And the stuff that doesn't make sense is I'm all in for it if you sit him in the fourth quarter and say, hey, like, we're punting, punt the game. But like to say, hey, we're not punting the game, we're going to play them, but then your actions show differently in the play call, like, you know, just don't call me an idiot. Like, oh, we're not punting the game, and then you're throwing, you know, bubble screens on 1st and 15 after a false start when you're down by 21. Like, just like, don't call me a fool here. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff just, I'd respect it 10 times more if you just said, hey, like, not our day. Don't want to get Joe hurt. Like, next one. I can live with that. Like, and I think that's a little bit of the frustration that you see in the fan base, and I think it's a little bit of the frustration you see in the locker room of, and I don't want to get into the whole ZT debate, but the actions compared to what's being said just don't really line up, you know? Like, I get it. I get, like, you obviously can't save Joe from himself at this point unless the leg breaks. I don't think Joe's coming out. But like, it's almost like they're kind of hit. Like, you made a good point. I think did they put him in place to succeed? I almost feel like they're worried about it, that they're handcuffing the play call on top of him. And maybe the best thing that happened to us, to be honest, is that we lost in Tennessee. And I'm sure there's a meeting this week where Joe goes in and says this shit has to right at some point, right? And saying, hey, like, I'm calling let me call the plays on the first drive. Let me call the plays on the set, whatever it is. Like, let's put a three drive script out instead of a 1 drive script. Like, let's figure it out. Because it seems to me that through this first month of the season, they've just treaded very, 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 very lightly.
Treading lightly might not even be light enough to say just how lightly this team has treaded on the offensive side of the football. It just feels like there's playing safe and then there's like playing afraid, and they seem to definitely.
I mean, let me give you one better. I mean, the drive when they're down 14 to Baltimore. I mean, you're not going tempo with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You're down by 2 touchdowns. Where Lamar Jackson's run all over you all day. Like, I mean, it's just certain things that, like, it's almost like they've treated the first 4 weeks, and it's going to sound like a cop-out. Clip it. I don't care. They've treated this 4 weeks like preseason. I really believe that in a sense, because you look at certain things like that. You're not going tempo down 14 on a home division game that you have a chance to win, right? You look at the second halves of the Cleveland game and the Tennessee game, they might as well just stay in the fucking locker room. Like, there's a lot of instances here that just show that they're kind of feeling out where they are, which I understand that. And I mean, I understand that if your schedule, you know, is Houston, Chicago, Carolina to start the first 3 weeks, but when you open up with back-to-back division opponents, man, and you got San Francisco and Buffalo on the horizon after the bye, like, put yourself in a tough spot.
So, speaking of those couple of teams you mentioned, I think that a group we haven't spent any time talking about yet, but we should touch on at least a little bit before we get into our last couple subjects. We got to talk about this defense, man, because I don't know what's going on with this group, but especially in the run defense, it just seems like we're looking at an entirely different team than we've seen for the last couple of seasons. Right now, they've given up the most explosive runs, which is any runs of over 10 plus yards. They rank 31st in total rush yards allowed. They're pretty much at the very bottom of rush defense EPA. Basically, every bad run defense stat that's out there, you're going to find about this team, which is fascinating to me because what have we known about the identity of this team over the last couple of seasons? They stop the run and they suffocate the pass. But, I mean, they've still done okay against the pass. It's been, I don't want to say they suffocate the pass. They do all right. They're not lighting the world on fire, but they also have 2 new safeties. Matt Stafford kind of tore him up, but Matt Stafford's doing that to everyone this year. The run defense thing is really concerning me, man. This is a team that's over the last, the other 3 times they played Derrick Henry, bottomed him in pretty good. The time before week 1, when they played Nick Chubb, bottomed him in pretty good. Even Lamar Jackson, over the last couple of seasons, done a really good job putting a spy on him, bottling him in. Even he tore him up. So I don't know what's going on with this group right now. It seems like a lot of guys, I don't know if it's a washed thing or if it's just a tired thing or what exactly it is. Personnel maybe even, but what's going on with this defense right now, man? From your perspective, do you have any sort of formula to it, or are you just about on the same level of frustration I am?
Very frustrated. I'm a little concerned with just the lack of the ability to put pressure on the other offense. Like you said with the run game, I mean, DJ Reader was pretty much non-existent last week, which is scary, and I think you flirt with that a little bit, and we've touched on it too, like the wash/personnel factor. I think there's new faces. I think there's been a lack of creativity, which is something that is alarming and concerning to me. I'm going to go somewhere that maybe hasn't been touched as much and could seem like a cop-out. I mean, the special teams and punt game has been an issue too. We haven't turned Fields, man. I mean, that was something. Not saying that Kevin Huber was lighting the world on fire, but I mean, we had the ability to change. If you look at if you look at the starting positions on some of those drives in the first 8 weeks of the last 2 seasons when it was warm out, I mean, Huber was doing a good job just kind of switching fields on us. We haven't really had that, man. I can remember vividly, after like 17 White Claws at Paycor, Brad Robbins' punt that clearly went about 17 yards off the side of his foot. And you can just hear it's like one of those in the stands where, like, as soon as he hits it, you're just like, fuck, this is going nowhere. But that's an issue. I think, I know you said it a little bit more, and it goes twofold, like the defense kind of getting stops at the edge of midfield and just pinning the offense back. Like, field position's a big thing, and something that if you look at Arizona's games, they've struggled with in the second halves in these games. They've been able to compete a little bit in the first halves. Obviously, in the second half against Dallas, they made some really big plays. But if you look at what they've done in the second half, they've really struggled with field position. So this is a game where I'm looking for them to get back on track and kind of turn fields on some of these teams. But it's concerning, and it's also concerning because they're kind of at full strength. There's not really an injury to be had. There's not really a guy missing. I mean, Osai came back in and really not been a factor. Am I crazy to say it's one of those, how they say, addition by subtraction? Did we get a little bit of subtraction by addition? Just too many guys kind of in the fold? I mean, that's a worry for me a little bit. You got 9 or 10 guys on that front 7 front that are just kind of cycling in. Guys not getting consistent reps. I mean, I've just been concerned. I mean, Sammy's been pretty concerning for me. His lack of ability to set the edge against Lamar. I mean, that's half of what his contract is worth right there. Like, that's what your broad hitter do. So it just has to be better overall. I believe in Lou. I believe in Lou's ability to do it. He showed time and time that he can with less, and I think he will. But let's go again. Like, I think that this is another group. We're not saying you need a big name player, but if there is a pass rusher, if there is a safety, or somewhere in the lines of a guy that has some skin in the game, has a lot of reps under his belt, that can just make you a little bit more versatile, I'm pulling the trigger on a 3rd or 4th round pick.
And not to revisit old draft misses right now, but I mean, how much do you miss a guy like the idea of what Tyler Shelton was supposed to be for you right now, where you really could use that other big physical, talented body in the run game? Because Josh Tupou is just a body, and J.T. Bailey is just a body. Those are contributing run defenders. Zach Carter kind of has been, flat flashy, but mostly anonymous. DJ Reader can't do it all. And more and more, we're seeing teams just take him out. I mean, it's double and triple teaming because they know if they isolate him, they have a very good train. And you can do that with, your center in your guard and use a tight end or a running back chip and kind of do some different stuff. But the reality is they're going to get another big test on Sunday. Cardinals currently rank 5th in rushing success rate, 6th in rushing EPA, 7th in rushing yards per game. They're one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL so far this season. Now, Josh Dobbs doesn't exactly strike the fear of God in me like, maybe some other quarterbacks do, but they've been efficient on the ground, man. They can run the ball. So this team is really going to be tested on the run game this Sunday. Again, James Conner, David probably is familiar to Bengals fans, and if you're a fantasy football player or a football watcher, obviously he hasn't been out of your life. A former Steelers running back has been very nice since going to an Arizona Cardinals uniform. Very nice again for them this season. But man, I really wonder what is he there even to fix with his run defense at this point, other than maybe getting a little bit better play from Daxton Hill and maybe another leap up from Nick Scott, who has been okay in the past game, but hasn't been that Von Bell replacement in the running game by any the imagination.
Yeah, and I think that's been some of the issue with it. I think the front seven, and I think DJ and BJ have done a good enough job up front to kind of get some push. But like you said, you make a good point. DJ can't do it by himself at all. You got to get some of that boom from that second level to come up and make plays. I look at the corner last night I'm blanking on her name, from Seattle, the one of the pick six, and the
Devin
Witherspoon from Illinois. I mean, he's laying the boom on some of those plays in the flat and some run plays. Like you miss that if you're the Bengals. You need a guy like that. The more I think of it, we probably overlooked it because of age. You give it back to me, man. I'm taking Von Bell probably over Jesse Bates just off of the money and what he could still do for the Bengals. Like Von would help a lot. He'd pull a lot of holes here. I'm one of those. I mean, do we mix it around a little bit? Obviously, a friend of the show and great dude, and Mike Hilton. Like he's not been good, man. And not saying that he's not vital or useful for the Bengals anymore, but I mean, we've all known like the struggles and the lack of coverage that he's had. Like that's been a thing his whole we knew that coming in here, but you're not going to get to the quarterback on blitzes, and you're going to miss tackles in the open field. Like we got to look at other options, man. Maybe it's putting him at the safety spot a couple of times. I don't know at this point. Do we get Jordan Battle? I mean, that was another one. Home run ability, guy that can make great tackles in the open field. And what was he seen? 15 snaps in 4 weeks? Like, it's a little frustrating.
I honestly wonder if you start seeing DJ Turner go get those slot corner snaps. He's played a ton of outside corner snaps so far. He started to work a little in at slot corner. He's one of the fastest players on the field anytime he steps on the field.
Yeah.
I just wonder at this point, they've really liked the big playability that Mike Hilton's given them. DJ Turner has looked okay as a tackler. Man, I just wonder if you start seeing a little bit more of that. Now, DJ Turner is not very big either. Teams have been taking advantage of the size matchup against Hilton. That's been really probably the biggest part of the problem for Hilton in a lot of ways. I don't know. I
think it's one of those things too where, I don't think we've talked about this enough about this run of, you kind of become the hunted and sex with the hunter. And, your film session becomes a little bit different, right? Like, for how long were we chasing the Steelers and the Ravens where, like, Steelers week and Ravens week almost equal 2 to 3 wins for us, right? Where now, you're going into Arizona. Arizona comes in to beat Cincinnati, even though it won a 3 clip. I mean, they're beating back-to-back AFC championship runs, So I think there's a lot that goes into it, but the defense has to get better.
Well, Billy, we've been joined by a late arriving TO, and I think it's going to kind of put us right into our last 2 segments of the show. TO, you couldn't have joined at a better time because we're talking about who's disappointing us the most. No, we're going to do a little section here. Through 4 games, we want to talk about who's worrying us the most and who's impressing us the most. We're going to talk about the Cardinals right at the end. But let's talk about who's worrying us the most through 4 games first. And I'm going to go first, and I'm going to give you guys a second to calibrate. But my guy that's giving me the most worry, I'm really worried about Chase Brown so far. He's a guy that I feel like I hyped up a lot. He's a guy I liked even going into the draft. But it feels like when he's been on the field, he's looked undersized. And frankly, they just haven't really felt comfortable giving him the ball. He's had 2 touches in 4 games, including being inactive in week 1. He had one rush for I think 3 yards, and then he had 1 reception for -1 yard. So not a whole lot of touches for Chase Brown so far. I think he also has 1 special teams tackle, but he's 23 years old. Running backs hit the ceiling or hit their plateau a lot of times at 26. This is a guy that was supposed to be here on a rookie contract for 4 seasons, give the Bengals his term, and be out of the way. But if he's going to be a developmental piece at 23, man, that just really concerns me. That's kind of what my big disappointment is, mostly because I thought if you're the Bengals, you have to have a running back too. It's modern NFL football to be able to have 2 running backs. Even having a deep stable of running backs is increasingly common. Even if they're not highly paid guys, having the talent has clearly helped a lot of teams. So that's my guy that worries me the most through 4 games. Tio, you're currently in the dark, but you're going to bring us some joy with your worried pick. I guess. How are you, man? And who worries you the most through 4 games? That's a funny way to get.
Yeah. Hey guys, sorry for being late. I had to kind of work late tonight. I had to do some reffing gigs, but golly, where do you start? It would almost be easier to ask who's impressed you at this point.
We'll go there. That'll be next.
Yeah, right. Honestly, man, I think your running back's a great pick, and I think it speaks to kind of what a failure, in my opinion, the draft has been, and you touched on it, on Twitter. There's so many different directions they could have went in that draft that could have helped you now, instead of waiting till the 5th round to go get a running back. Go get a guy that everyone on Bengals Twitter liked, a Chain. Look at him lighten up the world, or be aggressive and go get the guy you want, Shaw Johnson, anyone like that. But as far as disappointments for me, I got to go Joe Burrow, man. What's his superpower besides escaping the pocket and extending plays? Like, obviously that's a superpower of his, but coming into the league, in his 3 years so far, what has he been comped to? He's been comped to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning the most that I've seen, and that's for his pre-snap adjustments, pre-snap reads, even post-snap reads. I get that the calf's limiting you, but at the same point, Tom Brady couldn't move in the pocket. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he had subtle movements, of course, that helped him, but Peyton Manning was an absolute statue back there, and he made it work. You got to find a way, and it might be mental at this point, right? Maybe he's not mentally back, but we've been saying it the whole year. He's been playing like a bottom 5 quarterback, and all metrics point to that. As soon as he gets back to average, to above average, to his elite self, any of those, the Bengals will be better. But that also speaks to the disappointment of the offensive coaching staff that, we've been dealing with for years now. And it doesn't just date to this year. We've always had a problem with the scheme. The scheme's never made sense. The scheme, I mean, I don't know if you have the tools right now, Willie, to pull up that picture on my Twitter that I retweeted and I shared with you guys. It's just a basic Tampa 2 that the Titans are playing, and no defender is in conflict. And it feels like that happens a lot with Bengals scheme. And for a team that's seen Tampa 2 for 2+ years now, you would think that they have answers, and they don't. You can take shots on Tampa 2 or cover 3. You can still take those shots, because once you go streaking down the field, it's still a one-on-one opportunity. And it's just, that's where my frustration is. And that's who's been most disappointing for me, is Joe Burrow and the offensive coaching staff.
I don't think it's an unfair pick. I mean, Joe Burrow, this is such a quarterback-dependent team. And when your quarterback isn't playing well, it's going to severely limit what you're doing, especially, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, but in the ball possession game, too, and in the field position game, all that kind of stuff. It just holds you back. And Teal, you're totally right. I mean, Burrow's processing ability is probably, as much as the pocket manipulation stuff, The processing has been probably the biggest story with him, pre-snap adjustments and all that stuff, and none of it's there. It's clearly not happening because guys aren't getting open. There's not easy targets happening. It's on him and the coaching staff, but Burrow himself, fresh off of becoming the richest player in NFL history, not playing up to that level. I mean, not at all. And the calf is definitely part of it, but the calf can't be all of it. If he's healthy enough to play, he can't be a bottom 5 quarterback. You're totally right. So I completely agree with you. And from there, I'm going to go to Billy for his player whose worries/disappointments in those through 4 games.
No, I get that, but I want to dialogue a little bit because this has been frustrating for me, and I'm interested to hear your take on it, both of you guys. But I hear everything you're saying to you, like I really do, and I hear it. You hear it all over the place on Twitter and everything with our fan base. But like, what's the difference of like we were talking before you got on, Teal? Like this team has been to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Like it's not a mistake. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where, like, I mean, I think we can all agree too. Let me put it this way. I think it's been a 2-2 start at least the first four games in the last 3 years. Am I right, Willie? I think it was 2-2 each way, right? Because they lost to Green Bay, I think, that other year when they beat Minnesota week 1.
3-1. Yeah.
3-1 that year. I'm sorry.
They were 3-1,
and then eventually 3-2. That was week 5 game, but. Like the slow starts are a thing, and like I have the faith. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm wrong, but like I don't. Do you guys like? Does it bother you guys that it's a vanilla type of playbook? And do you think that there's a method to the madness of not showing your cards in the first 4 weeks, or do you think it's just lack of the ability to attack the coverage? I want to know like your take on that. Do you think that there's like a method to the madness of, hey, we're gonna kind of slow play it, not show our hands, we got a bunch of stuff in the bag, but we're not going to take it out until November, December? Or do you think it's something where like they just physically don't have the tools or the necessities to break some of these coverages?
So I'll go quick and I'll let you go. But in my opinion, I think that there's a method to concealing some of it, but if they're concealing it at this level, it's not smart. I mean, if you have players that are as smart as the Bengals have and are as, gifted on the football field as the Bengals have, there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to run something they ran in week 5 and not be able to run it in, the AFC divisional round. There's no reason. And there's no reason they can't run the same, plays can't pop up in different places throughout the season. I don't know. We have T.O.'s official radio now. So for me, I think that there's a method to concealing some of it. And maybe that's part of what's going on. But if they're concealing it at this rate, that's extremely concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in after you, and I think you're absolutely right. If they are concealing, they're fooling me because this looks like the same exact offense that they've rolled out for 3 years now. And yeah, in year 1 it worked, right? Because you're not getting the 2 high safeties every time, and I don't know why it took teams forever to adjust, but it did. And you could go back to the AFC Championship game. We're a Jamar Chase double team drop away from not even being in the game, and them taking over at midfield. And good luck.
That's true. That was one of the sickest 4th downs I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. But it shouldn't be that hard. With all this talent, it should not be this hard. And I will give Zach one thing is he's done a better job scheming up Jamar Chase catches.
Yeah.
But where was that in the second half? Like it comes and goes. It's bizarre.
This team should never go 3 and out. They should have the lowest 3 and out percentage in the league, or at least in that top 5 category. You don't see the Chiefs, the Bills, the Chargers, the Dolphins. You don't see those teams going 3 and out. And at some point, your defense is going to break. I mean, the other team's paid to score the ball as well. And our defense for the better half of 2 years has been the reason this team has been succeeding. When we lose, it is because of this offense. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying everything this offense does.
Well, I mean, you're trying to be critical, but you're not wrong. That's
But you know what I mean? Like
No,
I know
definitely.
exactly what you mean. I completely get you.
even when they're on, it's hard. It's so hard to score points with this team. It's hard to watch, and it has been for 2 years.
I mean, it's like the thing about this team, and we're same old stripes, so it's kind of funny we're going to this one. But with this offense, it always feels like if it's not one thing, it's the other.
Right.
If it's not the offensive line, it's that it's that someone can't catch, or if it's not, if it's not that Burrow is hurt, it's that, the offensive line isn't good enough, or the tight end's not healthy, or that Joe Mixon can't find a lane, so they can just queue up on the passing game. It just feels like with this offense, it's not one thing, it's the other. And right now, they're in a spot where it's everything all at once, except for the running game, which is captivating. I don't get why that works and nothing else does. Explain it to me like I'm 5. You couldn't. It's impossible. It makes no sense.
No, I appreciate that. I like the dialogue because I think it's something that I've struggled with a lot over the last couple of days of being like, you want to be positive, like, hey, this team's gotten it done. And Tio, you missed it before, and I said, like, I think something that's being overlooked in this locker room by fans, I think a lot of the media too, of like every time this team has been backed against the wall in the last 3 years, they've answered the bell, right? And I do think they'll answer the bell on Sunday, like I really do. But it is frustrating because like Tio says, sometimes it's like you're watching the same old song and dance every Sunday, and it's like, what is it? Like you want to get into the back of the heads of being like, because I'll be honest, like the second half of the Baltimore game and the second half of the Rams game are really the only two halves offensively that like looked anything like the Cincinnati Bengals. And for that to be the case out of 2 out of 8 halves, it's alarming and concerning. I'll even give it 2 out of 6 because I do think they punted both the second half of the Tennessee game and the Cleveland game. Like I told Willie before, Tio, like they might as well just stayed in the locker room on Sunday in the second half. Like don't and again, like I'll bring it up to you, Tio. Like it frustrates me of if we're gonna punt the game, take Joe out, but don't tell me like. Don't fool me for an idiot saying, hey, we're competing to win the game. It's a 3-score game, and we're bubble screening to, Joe Mixon on 3rd and 13. Like, just like let's just stay on brand of like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. But to go back to the original question for you, Will, somebody that's giving me concern, probably a little bit like someone I never would have thought would have given me any concern to start the year. But he hasn't really looked good, I don't think, in the first 4 weeks. And I think he's critical for both sides of this line because I really do think it starts with him. Obviously, I think the leadership's there from him, and that's not been one. But, I mean, Teddy's been getting beat up the face a lot, and it's been concerning for me. I think Jonah's been better. I think Jonah's put some decent tape. He's been serviceable. He's been a lot better than I've expected. I think the outsides have been.
The Bengals have good tackles, everyone. Tackle play is pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll take the tackle play all day long.
Yeah.
Period. All 4 weeks, I'll take it.
I thought you were going to say Kappa.
I mean,
I thought you were going to say Kappa too.
Kappa's been a little disappointing too, but like, I've watched a couple of clips of some of these 22s. I mean, it's like you can go either way, but like Teddy's getting bull rushed on a couple of these plays, which like you've never seen before, and that's a little concerning to me. And it like comes into that category again. We don't want to like label the wash personnel, but you're getting up in age, and a couple of those guys on that line where, I mean, we didn't even have to think about the middle part of that line, right, at all the last 2 years, and like. I obviously Cordell's age and his experience. There's going to be some hiccups there, no doubt. But it was kind of but it was unreliable in the middle, right? And I guess you can twofold it between Teddy and Kappa. It's been, we've been getting killed on some stunts inside, just things that you're really not used to. So that's my pick there. Upwards of a couple of takedown sacks that Orlando's given up, here and there. Like I think the tackles have been pretty solid. But we've got to be a little bit better up front, man. And I think it really starts with Teddy, in my opinion. But obviously, Teddy and Kappa have to kind of hold that inside a little bit better.
The thing about the guards, I just feel like the entire communication on the interior of the line has not been very good, which surprises me considering these guys were very, very close. They've talked about how close they all are, and they spent a lot of time together during the offseason, which is So it just feels like the communication is not there. And especially these two road games in particular, the Browns game and the Titans game, they just got cooked in those two games up the middle. I mean, say what you want about Myles Garrett on the edge, but man, the interior pressures really got eaten alive. So let's quickly go into this last little thing. One who impressed us. We'll do that quick, and let's talk about the Cardinals. Who's impressing you through 4 games? I'm gonna go first again. I'm gonna go. Let's do old reliable, baby. Let's do Drew Sample. I've been pretty happy with Drew, and mainly because our guy Max Toscano has talked a lot about during this offseason, wanting to see the Bengals develop more of that 12 personnel look, have a tight end that can be more of that physical blocker and occasionally make a catch, in addition to having a better pass catcher. Maybe they don't have the better pass catcher, but Drew Samples absolutely looked the part of that extra blocker, especially in the Rams game. They moved him back a few extra sets into the backfield as an extra blocker. I really like that look. I would like them to lean into that.
Ryan Hewitt right there, baby.
Yeah, even if you're going to go split backs and have Joe Mixon and Drew Sample back there, give me more of that with this team. Give me more Drew Sample moving around. I can't even believe I'm saying it, but we're here and there with PFF, but he's PFF's #1 graded pass blocking tight end right now. 100% pass blocking efficiency. I think on a pretty good number of dropbacks too. So Drew Sample's been pretty damn reliable as a blocker. He's not even on that second-round contract anymore, so you can't blemish him too up. He's on a 1-year tight end deal. So think about it that way. If you're just thinking about Drew Sample as a 1-year blocking tight end contract, he's been pretty good value, and I think he's been pretty good. So that's my one guy that's impressed me. T.O., who's impressed you through 4?
Oh, man. Let's see. There's like 3 names.
Brad Robbins.
Yeah, Brad. Oh, yeah, he had a good week. Good for him. He needed it. But no, not Brad. Not Brad. Even though he's been probably our best offensive player throh 4 weeks. Take that. Unbelievable, man. But no, I think I wanted to go Dax Hill. I think Dax Hill's looked awesome. And he should be back. It should be him and Bates running the show back there. It is what it is. But I'm gonna go Orlando Brown, man. I think he's been worth every penny. Obviously he struggled in Tennessee. Tennessee's got a nasty pass rush, man. It's been for years.
They also threw everything at them.
Going back and
watching the game, they threw the damn kitchen sink at this team.
And he didn't really start struggling until late first half. When it's just teeing off. They know they're not running it. So, but I think Orlando's been good, man. I think he's been a great pass protector. Outside of Tennessee, I haven't noticed him once, and that's all I want to know. But even when he got beat one time, I noticed he ducked out of the way so Burrow could. And it's just like that. That's just smart to me, man. So I'll say Orlando. I think it's been worth every penny. And if Burrow gets his mobility back, I think that'll be huge. I think probably both of those sacks that he gave up wouldn't have been sacks if Burrow had mobility. But that's another thing, man. We got to stop talking about this stupid calf. Players play through injury. Either play or don't. If it's limiting you where you can't go in pistol even, don't do it. Just give me a backup. We'll go get a top 5 pick. And that's where I'm at because and I cannot stand Patrick Mahomes. Cannot stand him. But if he did have a high ankle sprain, I think that's a far worse injury than a calf strain, in my opinion. I'm a Phi Ed teacher. I've had to take sports medicine classes. A high ankle sprain is worse than a fractured ankle. You cannot play on that. And for him to suit up and then still be as mobile as he was.
I'm calling bullshit on the high ankle sprain, but just saying.
I am too. I call it from day one. That no way he plays through that. Later. But if it was a high ankle sprain, But either play through it or don't, man. I'm sick of hearing about it. I get it. Like I probably wouldn't be able to play through it because I'm a little, but I don't know. That's where I'm at.
That was your weekly same old sports doctor segment. That's awesome. I like that pick, T.O. Orlando Brown Jr., baby. We love every penny. Same Old Stripes podcast guest represent. Billy, who's impressed you the most in 4 weeks?
I'm going to go with one that's probably got kind of ruled out in the last week because he ended up on IR. But being there live, Charlie Jones brings something to this team that we really haven't had since the Pac-Man Jones. I mean, obviously in the touchdown that he brought back, but you know, I mean, we and Willie were sitting there in the stands. I mean, every time he touched the ball, it looks like he was going to pick up 10, 15 yards. And he has that ability to kind of get really skinny and small in some of those holes. You know, when he's getting wrapped up, to just pick up 3 or 4 extra yards, which, you know, we hope. I think it's a broken thumb, I'd assume, right? I think he's probably out maybe 4 weeks, but I think that's something that's going to be very, very underrated in January if the Bengals can really get there to play deep, of having the ability to, you know, get a 13 to 14 yard run back on a punt that, you know, in the fourth quarter, like that wins you playoff games. You know, that gives you the ability to get into field goal range off a kick. And I think we probably saw it in the kind of scaffold that Trent Irwin had on it, where, like, you know, we could use Charlie Jones. We definitely can. And obviously, like, a little bit more in the receiving game. And I think that probably comes in the next couple of years there, with just building some trust with Joe. But for the time being, I think Charlie Jones gives us something that we can definitely use if we get into December and January football.
And unfortunately, they're not going to have him for a long time. Not a super long time. I don't know enough about the game.
It's got to be like 4 weeks, I'd assume, right? A broken thumb.
Yeah, I'd imagine if it's a broken thumb and he's on the IR, I'd hope it's just like a 4 weeks because it's going to be 4 weeks kind of thing,
right,
and not like 4 weeks because it's going to be the rest of it, and not IR because it's the rest.
Right.
I mean, like, let's be honest. He doesn't do anything but take back punts, so there's no point in having a roster spot there, right? So I get it.
Yeah, I think I was looking at his snaps today. He had 3 total snaps as a wide receiver, and I think he's had 1 target for 1 catch for like 3 yards, or like maybe 4 or 5 yards. Regardless, also sad about the Charlie Jones injury.
Yep.
I get it. It do be like that at this time of year. So I think from there we're going to go ahead and jump into our little tiny Cardinals preview, because we are around an hour. We don't want to jump super long in your guys' day. But Bengals are 1-3. Obviously, not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. You're playing the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona on Sunday. That is a game I will be attending in person, and I will be pretty grossed out if they lose. This is my vacation. This is what I'm spending my money to do and my PTO to do. So, boys, just please make me look good. I'm begging.
Man, we coordinated there. I have family in Arizona, man, and I was close to buying tickets. Yeah, I could have got you some free tickets. Dang.
Oh man. Well, regardless, the Bengals will be down there on Sunday, and so will I. I wish we were going TO. That'd be a whole lot of fun. Well, if this happens again with the Bengals end up in Arizona, we'll make it happen. But that stands the case. We talked about must win when we kind of did our season preview podcast, but we're kind of getting there now, man. Obviously, losing the way they did on Sunday I think makes this more of a conversation, but I'll let you go first. I mean, how close to a must-win situation is the situation in Arizona? It's an NFC opponent, but at the same time, man, if you get to 1-4, you're really digging yourself a hole that it's not going to be a whole lot of fun to come back from, especially in a division where you still have 4 games left against a pretty loaded slate, and just in that little bucket alone.
Yeah. I mean, I already used my must win against the Rams. You can't go 1-3, obviously. So you go 1-3, the season's over. It just is what it is. A 1-4 is right about the same place. So I would say it's another must win if you're not punting on this season. You go 1-4, and then you look at the second half of that schedule. You're not going on a 10-game winning streak. You're just not. I don't see it. There's a lot of tough games, and especially you got to consider you got the Ravens again, who are out for blood always when they play us. You got the Browns, who we struggle with. I think you sweep the Steelers, sure, but you still got the Bills, you still got the Chiefs, you still got the Vikings, even though the Vikings
49ers.
The Niners, it just keeps going.
Jacksonville on Monday night.
Exactly, man. So you more than likely are not going to find a 10-game stretch there. That's why I think the before the bye was very important, man. I mean, before the season, we were talking about 5-1, 6-0 even. But it's just not there now. I think now you try to scratch and claw and get to 3-3 and then reassess. But you get to 1-4, and I'll throw this question right back to both of you is say you go down to Arizona and you lay another egg, you score 10 points, which would be almost a season high for us. You score 10 points, you lose 27-10. It looks just as bad as it has. Where do you go from there? Do you punt the season? Do you start looking to trade people? What would you guys do? What do you think they would do?
Man, you get to that point, you lose like that. I mean, that to me screams you got to fire a coordinator. It doesn't have to be the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, that when we look around the league,
So hard though, man. When he doesn't call the plays.
Yeah,
Like,
he'd be the scapegoat.
But that's why it's so hard for me when Zach's calling the fucking plays. I mean, like, I'm not saying we're firing Zach, but like it's just it puts you in such a weird position. Like you're firing Callahan, like I get it, but like what is besides Callahan like putting a vote in at the meeting, like what is he doing really? You know?
Willie probably has a better answer for that, so I'll let him take it.
I agree with that. I think you're at that point, Willie, too. Like he probably doesn't make it to Seattle if that happens, but like. What is the step? I mean, do you take it away from Zach? Do you like just fire the coordinator and just elevate someone? First. Like I would think that too. Like you got to get a mix in here. Do you bring another? I mean, it's October. You can't bring a coordinator in here and change the playbook in 6 days. You know.
I mean, shit, it wouldn't be that hard to be honest. You just tell them, okay, now we're not running streaks and plants or back shoulders.
Also, you have to call 7 more runs a game.
Yeah,
just work it in.
Go ahead, Willie.
So I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. You can't lose this game. You really can't. Getting to 1-4 gets you in a horrible position. It's very Marvin Lewis-y towards the end, like the sad Marvin era. And that's kind of where this team feels anyway, man. Just they don't do a whole lot very well. I mean, what does this team do good right now? What does this team do well? They were doing the punt return game well. But that went out the window when the thumb injury popped up for Charlie Jones. So, I mean, the one thing they were doing really well, kind of out the window. Yeah. Because, I mean, you kind of thought the pass rush might be a thing, but it's been so hit and miss other than the Rams game. And that Rams offensive line, trash. But the Bengals didn't do anything against a battered Ravens offensive line. The Titans offensive line hasn't been anything all season. They were okay, but they really didn't get a whole lot going against Ryan Tannehill, who is not exactly Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's a decent athlete, but it's not like Lamar's back there, man. So that's where I'm at. Josh Dobbs, decent athlete. James Conner's good running back. You got to be able to beat this Cardinals team, man. Get to 2-3. Get to that Seattle Seahawks game. If you're 2-3 going into that game, you got the home crowd. Maybe Burrow's a little bit healthier. I think that's where it's at. So we'll talk to you guys next Tuesday. We're going to be coming to you guys Tuesday nights around this kind of time, same time, rest of the season. So stay tuned for that. We're very excited to kind of have this night hammered out for you guys. Going live, I think, is the right idea for you. Make sure you subscribe, do all the good stuff. But we'll wrap up there. For Billy and Tio, I'm Willie, and Hooday.
Hooday, fellas.
Hooday, and I will say, firing a coordinator is the light at the end of the tunnel. It means the end. Never a good sign. Hooday.